It was a psychology program, and they were looking at programming the brain.
Oh my.
Yeah. So
okay.
Let's look at a Manchurian Candidate. And then some people might remember that movie from the early 50s, late 60s. Early 60s, late 50s.
What was the title of it?
The Manchurian Candidate. And this is where the communists turned around, and they were able to, in the movie, they programmed American prisoners of war to carry out secret missions, and all they would have to do is give them a trigger word, and that would be carried out.
Interesting you mentioned that, Peter, because I just told my wife this the other day. When I was in high school, they had a hypnotist come to the school gym, had all the kids from the whole school in the gym, and there was select few. They collected 5 or 6 people and had them down there in the ball court down below us all, and they were going to hypnotize that group of people. And that was what they said was, later in life, 10 years from now, if we see you and we say this word, you will be back under our hypnotic spell, and we will be able to command you to do what we say. And they'd have them do little tricks like touch your nose and all these things. And I said to myself, I ain't doing that. I actually, God was blessed me, and I covered my ears. Yeah, it's working now. Troy fixed it up. My wife was just saying she had messed up Blog Talk, and so. Yeah, she said hello.
Hello, Monique. How are you?
And so, God blessed me with the wisdom to cover my ears when he was putting that spell on them there, Peter. Well, I just had the insight to know that this is not something I want to take part of. I don't want nobody to have that power over me later.
You were wise in doing that. Some people go to hypnotherapy to bring out problems in their life, or to resolve an issue that they might have ongoing, regardless of what it might be. And there is a good side to it, but like everything, there's a good side and a bad side. It depends on where your focus is. And if you allow yourself to be put under someone else's spell or be hypnotized by someone, they can program your mind with something that you're not aware of, which can be recalled at a later date. And this is actually something that is much more prevalent than what we understand. There are so many black operations that the government and the CIA are running, which fall right into this category. And, here we have this shooting that happened in December up at Sandy Hook, Connecticut, where allegedly this young man went in, killed a lot of children, 20 children and 6 adults, and then he went out and he shot himself. Well, did that happen or didn't it happen? If you do the research on it, you're finding a lot of inconsistencies in this story. But regardless, it seems like they sacrificed 20 children. Now, if we go back into biblical history, who demanded sacrifice of children? It was the god Molech, yeah. And let's bring it right into the 21st century here. When you go out to California, there's a little private camp, it's about 2,000 acres, called Bohemian Grove in Northern California. And the world's most powerful men go there for 2 weeks to do exactly what they want. It's the most exclusive men's club in the world, and they start off their ceremony for their 2 weeks with a sacrifice to Molech. Yes. It's actually called the cremation of care, and folks, you can look anything I say up on the internet, find information about it. It's out there. It's public knowledge. There are some things which I might say which aren't public knowledge, but we'll get into that a little bit later, just because they don't want you to know. It's extremely hard. You have to have a contact with somebody who's an insider, and then you start to get some information, which is pretty bizarre. But here, Molech worship is alive and well in the 21st century. How is that? You see,
well, because the same thing comes around and goes around. The devil's game hasn't really changed a lot. If you look at the end-time prophecy of what's going to happen, it really ties in well with what he promised Adam and Eve, Peter, in the garden.
Absolutely. We can tie this in We'll tie it in a couple of different ways, but everybody was waiting for the world to end in December 21st, 2012, and it didn't end. Why? Because the Mayans never said it was going to end. What the Mayans said, it was the end of the long count Baktun, and they said the next cycle will bring in their feathered serpent god. Wait a minute, serpent god? You mean like as in Genesis? Yeah, that's the one in the tree. The serpent proved to be the most cautious of all the animals of the garden. Now, it's interesting. A lot of people, and throughout history, the serpent has been portrayed as a snake. But when you read the account, there's something much more than a snake here. It's just called a serpent. But what happens? What was the curse against the serpent? That he would crawl on his belly in the dust of the earth. You mean he didn't have to crawl before? Maybe that serpent was actually a dragon.
Maybe.
Well, you get to Revelation, the 12th chapter, and what do we read? That war breaks out in heaven, and the dragon and his angels battle against Michael and his angels. But it didn't. But the dragon doesn't prevail. The great dragon is referred to, and this great dragon, as you read through Revelation, the 12th chapter, it tells us plainly that this great dragon is Satan and the devil. And what happens? Well, a place is not found for them any longer in heaven, and so down to the earth they are cast. And then you go down a little further, and it says, "Woe for the earth, because the devil has come down to you, knowing he has a short amount of time." Mm-hmm. And it's interesting. It says, "Be blessed, you heavens, because you've been cleaned up." When you go back to the Lord's Prayer, we've been praying for 2,000 years, roughly, for God's will to be done in heaven and also upon the earth. So by Revelation 12, that will has been done in heaven. Now we have to wait for that will to be done on earth. So that's the mode that we're in. Now, here's an interesting thing. Historians will tell you that there are two changes in history, two dynamic changes in history. It's a point in our civilization where history had a divergence. And the first place where they go to is 1914. When we had the outbreak of World War I in 1914. We had death on a wholesale level. And then after 1914, we had the Spanish influenza at the end of the war. And World War I is believed to have killed about 20 million people. The Spanish influenza may have killed as many as 100 million all around the world. And here's an interesting thing. They didn't travel back then like we do today. You know, we had the outbreak of H1N1, where patient 0 was from Phoenix, Arizona. Wait a minute, how do you get patient 0 from Phoenix, Arizona, and then the outbreak happens in Mexico? How did he get sick between Arizona and Mexico?
A little Acapulco there, vacation or something, maybe.
Yeah. Well, he flew into Mexico City, and that's where the outbreak took place. But how come nobody got H1N1 in Phoenix? How come it started in Acapulco, but yet patient 0 is from Phoenix? He had to pick up the virus along the way. Hey, buddy, what time is it? And when the man looks down to look at his watch, somebody sprays the virus on his drink, and he goes on drinking after he tells you the time. He gets on the plane, and now he's sick. And now, here's the thing that most people don't realize. H1N1, in my opinion, was genetically engineered to attack the Hispanic race. Now, people say, oh, well, you're crazy. No. Let's look at the statistics here. When you look at the United States, all of the major cities around the edge of the United States, California, New York, Philadelphia, Florida, throughout Florida, throughout Texas, all the border states had large outbreaks. Chicago had a decent outbreak. There was one state that had no reported cases of H1N1, Nebraska.
Wow.
Yeah, so, you know, why didn't it have any reported cases of H1N1? Well, guess what? They plant corn in Nebraska, and there's no reason why any Hispanic people would really want to populate Nebraska to any large amount of time. It's basically one big cornfield from one end to the other end. So there's not a whole lot of fruit and vegetables to pick by hand. So you don't have the migrant workers involved. But where you really get the tell from H1N1 is when you go to Europe. Now remember, this broke out in Mexico City. When you go to Europe, you look at the reported cases, and these are numbers from the CDC, the Center for Disease Control out of Atlanta, and they reported that France had about 26,000 reported cases of H1N1. Italy had about 18,000 reported cases. Spain had 440,000 reported cases. How does Spain have 20 times the amount of reported cases as each one of the other countries? Oh, they're full of Hispanics. Man. Maybe that would be the tell. Yeah, there's your smoking gun for H1N1. So if they can do that for H1N1, they can do that for any virus. And so here you've got a plague that can be released upon the earth that would fit a prophecy in Revelation.
So if we see another outbreak of that flu, we could see like a third of the population, or maybe they won't all be killed by the flu, maybe some by war and some by flu, but we know in the prophecy that there's going to be large amounts of the population killed off. And of course 60%. We know... Did you say 60%? Yeah,
is what the prophecies are saying. There's two different places. One is in Revelation chapter 9, and I forget where the other one is, possibly 16. I forget off the top of my head. But between both of the prophecies, 60% of the Earth's population is going to be done away with.
Wow.
Yeah.
And, we know the Georgia Guidestones, they said something about trying to get down to 50 million or 500 million for the whole 500 Earth.
Million. Keep the Earth less than 500 million. So
that's a big reduction. That's 6.5 billion people less than we have now.
At least,
maybe more. That's bad. That's bad. So, do you think that we're going to see more outbreaks of these flu viruses, Peter, that are going to attack specific races and things?
Well, I think that they're probably going to turn around and just unleash one that will not discriminate and will attack everybody. But no doubt they want to get rid of the minorities first. The problem is in South America, the minorities aren't Hispanic. But, you know, here's the thing. When you look at the actual fight that this world is in, who's the fight between? Well, it's between Jesus and between Satan, correct? I mean, Jesus told us he told Pilate, "My kingdom is no part of this world, but he's coming back to make the world part of his kingdom." And when we go to Revelation, the 19th chapter, we're told that the Lord of Lords and Kings of Kings is coming back with the armies of heaven, or the armies of the multiverse, because we don't live in just a three-dimensional world. We live in a 10-dimensional multiverse. That might sound a little strange to some people, but hey, that's what the math says. When you do the math, and this is interesting, and by the way, I don't subscribe to any particular religion or dogma from religion. I'm a scientist at heart. My Bible education started before I was 5, and I grew up with this paradox in my life. I had the Bible on one side, but I had science. I loved science, and I had a situation happen where I got to see the future when I was 9 years old. And I ran home and I told my mother about it. Mom, I had a dream that came true. And I got sent to bed, and so my spiritual side was cut off, but I had to know the answers, so I started studying science. I was studying chemistry at 10 years old, and I eventually became a chemist, and it was in my days working in a laboratory, in a research and development laboratory, that I was reading the book of Job, and I came across Job, the 32nd chapter, and God's talking to Job, and he says, "Have you seen my storehouses of ice and snow, which I have saved for the day of distress and war?" And I'm thinking, what would Job know about ice and snow? He lived in the Middle East. And then so I closed my eyes, and I went to a prayerful, meditative state, and I thought, I was looking through the eyes of Job, and so what would he see? And then I started to elevate myself above the earth. And as I moved further and further away from the earth, I realized the storehouses of snow are at the poles, Antarctica and the Arctic Circle, or Greenland. And I said, well, what do you do with ice and snow? Well, you can either make more of it or you can melt it. Well, here's an interesting thing. NASA, and you can go check this out on the internet. Go look up Greenland ice melt. NASA says that in 4 days, the ice melt in Greenland, or the surface ice in Greenland, went from 40% melt to 97% melt. How do you lose 57% of the ice in 4 days?
Wow. Well, by changing the temperature so drastically, I would guess we're seeing a lot of drastic changes in temperatures now, sometimes 40, 50-degree swings in a single day's time. Do you think it's something to that effect?
Well, the insiders will tell you that they found a giant UFO on Greenland, and it's been active since before the Second World War, and they are blaming that on the ice melt. As a matter of fact, they have been back. It's still active, it's still viable, and they have been back engineering a lot of the technology. So the United States military has weapons and technology that are literally off this planet or out of this world. And here's the thing. We can't deny that something's going on with extraterrestrial or UFOs, because more and more people are saying that I've seen them.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
True.
Here's the thing. Just how physical is this going to get? And this is an ongoing argument that I've had several times with people, and not an outright argument, but a discussion, really, is that this can become a lot more physical than what we understand. Because when you look at the evidence, so I look at things from a scientific viewpoint and see how they match up with what is written in the scriptures, especially when it comes to prophecy. Now, here's the thing. When you go to Revelation chapter 8, in my humble opinion, I believe Revelation chapter 8 has been totally fulfilled. Now, Revelation isn't written in chronological order, but let's take a look at some of the things that it talks about in Revelation chapter 8. When you go to, let me just get the good book out here. When you go to chapter 7, now these are the trumpet blasts. These are announcements of things that are happening or that are going to happen. It says that when you drop down a little bit in verse 7, it says that a third of the earth was burned up, and a third of the trees were burned up, and all the green vegetation was burned up. Well, didn't we just have a major drought this year in the Midwest that destroyed 60% of the corn crop and the soybean crop? Oh, yeah, that's right, we did. But more than that, if you go online, you go to NASA and you can type in into Google NASA Earth forest fires. Remember last year we had all these forest fires around the United States? Well, they actually have a satellite which photographs the Earth and puts month over month and shows the Earth, and a third of the Earth is burning up. There are forest fires on every continent, with the exception of Antarctica. There were even brush fires in Greenland. Now remember, Greenland's supposed to be covered with ice. Not anymore. They had brush fires there in December. How do you have brush fires in a place that's covered with ice, unless it's no longer covered with ice? So the Earth is being burned up. Yeah. So pay attention. And, here's the thing. They are forecasting another dry year for the Midwest, so we can expect more forest fires and more droughts. Yes. So that one's been fulfilled. Let's go on to the next one, Revelation 8, 8, and 9. It says that the second, and this is what John is recording. He says, let's see, I saw something like a great mountain burning with fire hurled into the sea, and a third of the sea became blood, and a third of the creatures that live in the sea which have souls died, and a third of the boats were wrecked. What John didn't record was that BP and Halliburton were responsible for it, because this is exactly what we saw with the BP oil disaster. We saw something like a burning mountain fall into the sea, and we saw what looked like the blood of a dead man being spread out across the top of the sea. And we saw the dead fish and the dead birds and the dead dolphins washing up on land. Mm-hmm. And a third of, interestingly enough, a third of Louisiana's fishing industry was destroyed because of this. And this is something that is still plaguing the area. Yeah, they capped the well, but the residual from this will continue on for years. Let's go a little further.
Well,
Revelation,
yes.
Revelation, go ahead.
I wanted to ask you something about that. Did we see that many, a third of the sea life and a third of the boats destroyed, the ships destroyed during that incident? Was it that drastic or not quite, or was that coupled with Fukushima maybe? Or?
Well, we're going to get to Fukushima in a minute, but here's it may have not have been an exact third of the sea life that we saw. It may not have been, it was a third of the fishing industry. Yeah, but it was a third of the...
rolling up on the beaches.
Absolutely. It was a third of the fishing industry that was destroyed, and you have to remember something. What came out of this BP oil disaster was the first major censorship of reporting. The reporters, even for the mainstream news, couldn't get close enough to photograph the damage. And then what did they do? They started pouring chemicals on top of the ocean to make this sludge, to make all the oil sink. And how can these organisms live if they're covered in basically oil sludge? You see, and the media, a lot of people forget about this. You know, it happened last month, you forgot about it because you're trying to pay attention to what's going on today. But that was the first major censoring of the media. We weren't allowed to see anything. Or hardly anything.
Not much. You saw that little film where they show the oil coming out of the thing underwater, you know. But who knows? They had a hard time capping it. Remember when they were trying to cap it?
Absolutely. Well, the thing's down so many thousand feet. I forget the exact depth of it, but you're dealing with fantastic pressures, and the pressure coming out of the well was also a fantastic pressure because it was a super deep well. They were looking at pressures well in excess of 1,000 pounds per square inch. So, you know, it's like, you ever shake up a soda bottle with your finger over the top? That stuff wants to come right out of that bottle. It squeezes right past your finger. It'll make a mess all over everything. But it's a super deep well, which is heated by the mantle of the earth, and so that oil coming up is hot. Russia's produced a lot of these wells up in Siberia. That they're 40,000 feet deep. That's a deep well.
Well, they're saying some of these fish that's been coming up dead in the swarms in the bays where there's just be like thousands of dead fish. They're saying it's because of a fluctuation of the temperature and it's gotten too hot. And I'm not sure if I'm buying that totally, but what you're saying is this is a very hot situation, so maybe the water temperature in the ocean plus with the heating of the atmosphere in general, and maybe it is getting too hot for certain types of fish, because it was weird that certain types of fish were coming up together all dead in the bay, even here in Florida, you know, and they were all looked alike, you know, and so it wasn't affecting every species at that moment. But now we're seeing dolphins, and now we're seeing all kinds of other things coming up.
Sure, and, the one thing that happens, the warmer the water is, the less oxygen it carries. So if you have species that need a lot of oxygen, they're going to be affected first. But let's face it, there's evidence that the Gulf Stream had actually stopped during this whole process. And it's restarted, but it's not running the way that it used to. But let's go on to the next...
what's the next scripture, Peter?
This is Revelation 8, 10, and 11. And it says, a great star burning as a lamp fell from heaven, and it fell upon a third of the rivers and upon a third of the fountains of waters. And the name of the star is called Wormwood. And a third of the waters turned into wormwood, and many men died from the waters because they had been made bitter. Do you know how to pronounce wormwood in Russian?
Chernobyl.
Chernobyl, yeah. So here...
That's my Russian accent, by the way.
Yeah,
Chernobyl, yes.
Wormwood is Chernobyl in Russian, and that's where it started off. That was a major meltdown, which 25 years later... Now the Russians were smart about this. They went right in. Chernobyl is actually in Ukraine, just south of the Russian border. But the Russians went right in, and they covered up the whole area with concrete. They moved all the people out. They evacuated the town. It's now a ghost town, and it's still leaking. And so now they're in the process of building a dome over this to try to keep all that nuclear radiation under wraps, so to speak. But we had something happen which everybody seems to have forgotten. Almost 2 years ago, it'll be 2 years ago, March 11th, we had Fukushima. And Fukushima has been burning out of control, pouring its death right into the atmosphere. It has poisoned the entire northern hemisphere, and and is now leaking into the southern hemisphere. 4 months after Fukushima went off, they were looking at how it's affecting the United States. By June to July of 2011, the infant mortality rate went up to 40% in the the northwest of the United States, in the SeaTac area, in Seattle, Tacoma, and Vancouver, Canada. Infant mortality was up by 40%.
Wow.
The French in September of 2011 took soil samples from around the United States, and every single one of those soil samples was contaminated with Fukushima radiation, and it's still burning out of control. What they're not telling you is that also by September of 2011, over 100,000 American deaths have been contributed to Fukushima.
How many?
Over 100,000. So here we are, a year and a half later.
That's a modest figure, wouldn't you?
Yeah, but now that's a year and a half ago. That was a year and a half ago, virtually. So what's happened in the last 1 year plus, 4 or 5 months now? Okay. How many more people have died as a direct result of Fukushima radiation? So, bang, we got that one taken care of. By the way, it says, a fallen star. Don't look for a star falling from the heavens. What's a star? A star is a nuclear reaction. That's what stars are. They're nuclear reactions in space. Our sun gives us heat and energy and light due to the fact that it is an ongoing nuclear reaction. So we've got that one taken care of. Let's go on to the next one, verse 12. It says that a third of the sun was smitten, and a third of the moon, and a third of the stars, in order that a third of them might be darkened, and the day may not have illumination for a third of it, and also the night likewise. Well, wait a minute. We still see the sunshine. We still see it's not really dark, but wait a minute. It's just dimmed down. A third of the intensity has been done away with, both day and night. What could cause that? How about chemtrails? For those of you who don't know what chemtrails are, the government has been spraying aluminum and barium and other chemicals into the atmosphere to block the sun's rays. They feel the aluminum will reflect the sunlight somewhat, so it would reduce global warming. At least that's what they're telling us when they do admit to doing anything. If you look up Evergreen Corporation, you'll see pictures of these huge jetliners that have been converted to spray chemicals. And how quickly could they turn around and swap out the aluminum and barium that they're spraying throughout the atmosphere and put in some sort of biological? They have turned H1N5 into an aerosol, which can be spread just by coughing. You don't have to actually have contact with anybody, but it can be spread throughout the air now. That was a big controversy about a year ago because somebody figured out how to do it over in the Netherlands, and it was one of the universities there, and they wanted to publish their results. And there was a lot to do because people were saying, well, what if terrorists get a hold of this? Our government has turned into the biggest terrorists.
Well, theoretically, Peter, you're right now, but I don't see how this is going to end well. I mean, if all these things are truly in play, if we're at this point, wow, what is going to be next?
Well, next we get into Revelation, the 9th chapter. Now,
that's what I was afraid of.
I'm going to bring this back. It's interesting. Revelation 8 ends with woe, woe, woe to those dwelling upon the earth, because the rest of the trumpet blasts of the three angels who are about to blow their trumpets. And how does Revelation 9 start off? It says...
This angel.
Yeah, it says, I saw a star that had fallen from heaven to the earth. Now, stars, when it's talking in this capacity, aren't necessarily physical astronomical bodies. But this is a fallen star. Now, watch what it says here, or listen to what it says here. It says, and the key of the pit of the abyss was given him. So this star is a fallen angel. Who's the chief of the fallen angels?
I expect Lucifer or Satan or whatever you want to call him.
Absolutely.
Today.
And you see, he opens this pit. He opens the pit of the abyss, and he releases a plague upon mankind. What kind of a plague? It says, when you read further on down, it says that these creatures have the faces of men, but they have long hair, and they have bodies that look like horses, and they have tails that sting. And they went on stinging the men for 5 months, but they did not die. It's the sting of a scorpion. So there's going to be some sort of a persecution or some sort of a plague released upon the earth. And as you go down throughout the rest of that is where you find out that at least a third of the men are die because of this. So we have these things. This is the next big thing. So if Satan or this fallen angel is going to open up the key, has the key to the pit of the abyss. Now, who was thrown into the abyss? Remember, we had those fallen angels back in Genesis who came down and took wives for themselves, all whom they chose.
Mm-hmm.
Now, here's an interesting thing. Take a guess. We're going to go right back to the Mayans. The Mayans' long count calendar is 5,125 years. Do you know what happened 5,125 years ago on this earth?
Oh, let's guess. Is that when the Mayan calendar ended?
Well, that's when this last Baktun started. That's when it first started. Was it just ended now, and it's a 5,000-year count.
So that's when the calendar began, the long count.
Right. Now, here's an interesting thing. This is what the Bible records happened 5,000 years ago. It said now in Genesis 6 it says, now it came about that when men started to grow in number on the surface of the ground, and the daughters were born to them, then the sons of the true God began to notice the daughters of men, that they were good looking. Earth women are hot. What can I say? It's recorded right here in the scripture. And but what did they do? It
makes you wonder what the women there look like. Heaven. It's like Jesus done beat you with the ugly stick, girl. I'm going to get me one of them earth girls. Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's okay, but it says that they went taking wives for themselves, namely all whom they chose. And then it's interesting, they bore sons to them. Verse 4 says, the Nephilim proved to be in the earth in those days. And also after that, when the sons of the true God continued to have relations with women of men, they bore sons to them. So we had what we could call an extraterrestrial invasion, or these angelic creatures. Now remember, angel means messenger of God. If you read the book of Enoch, it refers to these creatures as the watchers. They were supposed to watch over us and help us with our development, but they left their post and they came down and they fathered the Nephilim. Now what happened during that time period? God was angry of what he was seeing, and he was really angry because he was going to destroy the whole world. He felt hurt to his heart that he had even made man, and now he was ready to destroy it. But what did he do? He found Noah was a righteous man, so he said to Noah, gave him the instructions to build the ark, told him what to do, gather the animals, plant the food, and to preach to the nations, the peoples around him, what God was going to do. Now, let's fast forward a couple of thousand years. Jesus said, just like the days of Noah, so will be the same things are going to happen before I return or when I return.
And you remember Noah was a man who was still pure. He was still, most people hypothesize he was still fully man. He didn't have that Nephilim blood in him.
Well, that's correct. Otherwise, we would have had major problems. Now, what most people, they say, oh, well, they were giants back then, because it says in when you look at the end of Exodus, when the 12 spies are sent out to spy the land of Canaan, 10 of them come back and they say the Nephilim lived there. Well, wait a minute. When you read the account that's written in the book of Enoch, Enoch says that these Nephilim may have been between 100 and 150 feet tall, which matches pretty much what the Greek mythology says. Remember the story of the Cyclops in what is it, the story of Ulysses? Not Ulysses. Jason and the Ark. Yeah. We have this huge human-like creature with one eye, and what did he do? He ate men. Interestingly enough, so that may have been how tall these Nephilim actually were. That they may have been 10, 20 times the size of a modern human man. And if they still were on the face of the earth today, we would see them. They'd be obvious.
Yeah.
The tallest man in the Guinness Book of World Records, I believe, was 8 feet 11 inches. And that's right. You might call that a giant. We got the story of David and Goliath. Goliath was a Philistine. He was one of the Nephilim in the land when the Israelites came in and took it over. But we know how David dispatched Goliath. Now, we can have genetic anomalies happen where the pituitary gland doesn't stop when it's supposed to, and people keep on growing to enormous heights. So we see that today, but there aren't any people that are 20, 30, 40 feet tall roaming the earth.
Yeah, so, amen. Glad there's not.
But, there is something that we do have, because Enoch gives us a little bit more insight. He tells us, before these fallen angels here, these watchers, as they're called in the book of Enoch, Enoch was a prophet to them. He was a preacher to them, and he basically was telling them about God's anger and how God was going to send them into Tartarus. And they asked Enoch to plead with God that they might be able to take their sons with them. Now, we know the scriptures say that flesh and blood cannot inherit the heavens. So what did they want to take? They wanted their souls, the souls of the Nephilim, to go with them. And the answer was no. And the reason that was given was because on the earth they were begotten, and on the earth they will stay. And so I'm wondering, and here's another point for discussion, could those people who are demon-possessed, could those demons actually be the spirits of the Nephilim?
Well, yes. I mean, I've thought that same thing, because they can't, they're not going to go to heaven for sure.
God didn't want them back. Yahweh said, no way. Now, it's interesting. I have a friend, a fellow by the name of Brother Bill Bean. Bill expels demons. He's a modern-day exorcist, and he does it in the name of Father Yahweh. I was talking to him when I first met him. I said, "Oh, Bill, how do you do this?" He said, and he started to tell me that, kind of like the process. He says, but it all comes down to they have to listen to the name of Father Yahweh, which is interesting, because Jesus pretty much did the same thing. Remember the Legion, the story of Legion in the Gospels, where Jesus is walking along the road with his apostles, and this crazed man comes running out of the cemetery, and then there's a conversation. And Jesus says, well, what's your name? And he says, my name is Legion, for we are many. And they didn't want to be sent to the pit of the abyss. They didn't want to be sent.
They were said, like, get us over to them pigs or something.
Yeah, and it was actually about 2,000 pigs that they went into, and the pigs went nuts, went over the precipice, and fell into the Sea of Galilee, and they died. So here, these life forms can possess people and things. If you have ghosts in your house, or you got things that go bump in the night and you don't understand it, you better start praying to Father Yahweh out loud in order to get them out of your house, or to identify whatever item it is so that you can remove it and get these deep demonic creatures away from you.
I have also had a lot of luck with the name of Jesus Christ of Nazareth, too, on getting things accomplished.
They must listen to him.
Because he said, if you ask anything in my name, Jesus said to us, the disciples, the people of the New Testament church, then my Father will grant it for you. So I think that Yes, I see your point. I have a friend who does exorcisms as well, and he does say the name of the Father, Yahweh, and things like that a lot too. But he does also invoke the name of Jesus. So he does both, I think.
Well, here's the thing. We go back to what I said is that history changed in 1914. More than likely, and based on the prophecies and how you put the prophetic numbers together, 1914 was the end of the Gentile times, and that's when Jesus took his throne, and that's when heaven was cleared out. So we've had woe on this earth since 1914, and things have been speeded up. Now, the second time when history had a change, according to historians, is December 11th, 2001. December 11th, 2001 was the fall of the World Trade Center. Anybody who believes that people from the Middle East did that with box cutters, they need to start doing investigative work, because this was something that was actually carried out.
Wow.
Did I say September? September 11th. Yeah, September 11th, 2001.
Yeah.
But what was the fallout from that? The fallout was the Patriot Act. The Americans, every single American in the United States gave up their rights after September 11th. Every single American lost their rights to privacy, because now the government can spy on us all. They can secretly record our conversations, and they can pick out which people they don't want around anymore, and they don't even need to get a court order to do it. And the Patriot Act was reinforced when it came up, when it was supposed to expire. George Bush sent it on for a few more years, and Barack Obama did the same thing. So we are under the Patriot Act. And the president, our current president, Barack Obama, has been writing executive orders, and when you look up these executive orders and see what they say, we have no rights. We do not even own the possessions which we think are ours. Anything the government wants, they can come into your house and legally take. Your food, your clothing, your furniture, your car, your guns, your bullets, all of that they can come in and legally take, because it now all belongs to the government. We have turned communist or socialist essentially overnight due to a presidential or an executive order here. Something to think about, folks.
I know, and well, I did catch wind of some of that. But, and I know about the NDAA and things, and where you don't even have the rights to an attorney or a trial if they deem that you're a terrorist. Peter, how is that American?
Absolutely. They can actually come into my house or your house and take you out in handcuffs, in shackles, put you on a plane, and fly you to another country and detain you there indefinitely.
Yeah. Doesn't seem nice to me. That's I don't really want no part of that. So
we are heading to this
Lord
one world.
Have mercy.
Yeah, we're heading to this one world government. The rise of the image of the wild beast, as is talked about in Revelation 13, and this, where you can neither buy nor sell unless you have the mark of the beast. That's coming too, because we're all as of March, anybody who goes to the hospital is going to be getting an RFID chip that will identify who you are. And, whenever you have a medical problem, they go in, they scan you. Oh, you're Mr. So-and-so. We've got your medical records right here. We got your criminal records. We've got any kind of contact that you've got. We've got all the records on you that the government has. And now we know exactly who you are and where you live.
Mm-hmm.
So we've lost our freedoms. We've lost our rights. And that's not what this is all about. So we are coming down to the very final days. Now, when we go back to Matthew, the 24th chapter, Jesus' apostles said, well, what are going to be other signs? Wars and rumors of wars. In the past 2 months, the whole world, it seems to have lit up with wars and rumors of wars. India is threatening to attack Kashmir with nuclear weapons. We've got Korea, which is talking about doing more nuclear experiments and more missile launches of intercontinental ballistic missiles. We've got war which has broken out in Africa. We've in Mali. We have had Mali, rather. Sorry, which is now the president decided that he's going to send drones to one of the countries, it slips my mind which one, Niger, I believe it is. So now they're going to start using drones to bomb possibly innocent people in Africa. We're doing it in the United States is doing it in Lebanon. They've done it in Pakistan. They've done it in Afghanistan. The United States has become one big war hawk, where we just go in anywhere we want and start destroying people. Wait a minute. Why? Why? Because here it's fulfilling biblical prophecy. We're getting closer and closer to these last days.
Do you think the Antichrist is going to stem from our shores, or do you think we're going to suffer like major destruction, as some of my guests say, and then the Antichrist is going to rise up out of the ashes of a huge war? Or what are you thinking on that?
Well, there's one thing that will change the world faster than anything, and President Reagan gave us the heads up on this. He stood before the General Assembly of the United Nations, and he said that we would settle our difference. We would put our differences aside if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
Do you think he was setting us up in advance for, like, full disclosure?
Yeah, kind of, because nothing would change the world faster. If we had an alien threat from outside this world, we would settle our differences. We would act as one unified body all the way around the world. We would turn around and we would unite. And what would we do? We would try to be fighting this alien threat. But here's the thing. Let's say it was just an alien occupation. Let's say it wasn't really a war. Let's say they came back and they said, "We are your gods. We created you." And this is exactly what some of the people who have alien contact are saying. If you look up the Galactic Federation of Light, interestingly enough, it says that they're now saying that their leader is our creator, and his name is Lucifer.
Yeah.
What? What?
I mean, that's a common name. We've heard that one before. Well, can't they come up with a new name that maybe wouldn't be from the Bible?
Yeah, but that's the thing. Why that they're telling us straight out exactly what's going on. And so now, if we had an alien occupation and these aliens, and I put aliens in quotes, I don't necessarily believe that they might actually be genetically engineered humans or genetically engineered life forms, and they might be inhabited by the spirits of the Nephilim. We don't know what this fallen angel is, what's coming out of this abyss that the fallen angel has been given the keys to. But he's going to unleash it upon us. Now, the other thing that it would do is that it would end religion as we know it. You would unite the world and end religion with one simple alien occupation, or what the government is telling us is an alien occupation. And interestingly enough, earlier this week, I read an article where Russia has told the United States that if they don't start getting on the disclosure bandwagon, Russia is going to give us disclosure on their own. They're going to tell us that we have been invaded by alien forces.
Wow.
Yeah. So
do you think these aliens are like demonic in nature, or do you think there's something that is being created to look like aliens, like in a laboratory? Or what are your thoughts on this alien full disclosure scenario?
It could very possibly be both. We know that the government has been back engineering alien technology or advanced technology. Yeah. And let's take a look at, if you read the book of Enoch, which is not part of the biblical canon. Yep, thank you. When you read that, it says that it actually names these different life forms, these different fallen angels, and it says that they taught men and women how to heal with herbs. They taught them about astrology and astronomy. They taught them metalworking. They gave the humans advanced technologies that we never had before. Mm-hmm. So it would only make sense that if they've been cast out of heaven around 2014. Remember, boy, wasn't that a slip on where it's coming from?
That'd be fine.
1914 was the first mechanized war. We had technology that we'd never seen before to fight a war with. And here, that has only advanced. Nothing has advanced faster than military technology. It said that military technology advances 40 years for every year that our secular technology advances. Where are they getting the technology from? You see, it raises a whole bunch of questions. When you get deeper down this rat hole, there could very well be bases on Mars and very well be bases on the moon. I've heard people talk about both several times, and these aren't just idiots. These are people who are related with the government. As a matter of fact, one of the people that was telling me about bases on Mars happened to be the great-granddaughter of Dwight D. Eisenhower. Wait a minute, didn't Dwight D. have alien contact too? Yeah. And they covered it up. So, we've been given fair warning, folks, but this isn't the end. This is only the end of this system, because when you read Revelation, the 19th chapter, where it says that Jesus is returning with the armies of the heavens, what's going to happen? Well, when you get down to, I think it's the 15th or 17th verse right in there, it talks about who is going to be destroyed, and it's the rulers of this system. It's the kings, the military commanders, the mighty ones, the rich, the small, the poor, all of those who are supporting these ones who are large and in charge today. We might even include the Freemasons among this. All of these ones are standing in opposition to Yahweh and the kingdom of Christ. And so these are the ones that are going to be done away with. Well, what can we do? What's the greatest command say? Jesus said you must love Yahweh your God with your whole heart, soul, and mind, and to love your neighbor as you do yourself. Nothing kills fear faster than love.
Yes.
Amen. Years ago, when the Soviet Union was together, we kind of like learned to hate these people. Well, about not quite 10 years ago, 8 years ago, I went over to Ukraine. I just wanted to go to Ukraine to see what it was like. I
see how bad the Chernobyl damage was, huh?
Well, yeah, that may have had some effect on me while I was over there, because I've spent quite a bit of time in Ukraine. I've spent, almost a year in Ukraine, about a month at a time. But here's the thing. I met some beautiful people, both physically and spiritually. I met people that love to love. They enjoy a good party. That they are very friendly. They're very open. They'll sit down and they'll share what they have with you. These are people that are wonderful. And wherever I've gone in the world, I have met wonderful people. Wow. The government's on the other side of the coin? I don't know about. You see, and so we don't have a fight against the flesh. But as we are told, our fight is against the governments, the authorities of this world, and the unseen spirit creatures. And remember, Lucifer, or Satan, keeps on turning himself into an angel of light. So we need to be cautious as serpents, but guileless as doves, as we are told. We need to remain in that. We need to keep that innocence, and we need to stay in a state of love. If you love your neighbor, you're not going to take out your assault weapon and kill him. You might share some bread. You might share some food. And this is something that we need to do, is we need to stockpile, not weapons, but we need to stockpile food. All of us need to take this into consideration, because when there's only 3 days worth of food in the food chain. When Kraft stops making their macaroni and cheese in 3 days, they're not going to have it at your local supermarket, because everything is just-in-time warehousing. When you buy a box of Kraft macaroni and cheese, and I'm just using this one item as an example, it gets scanned through the scanner, it gets downloaded into the store's computer. At the end of the night, the store sends that information back to Kraft. Kraft says, oh, I got to make another box of macaroni and cheese.
Thank you for using Blog Talk Radio. Goodbye.
Oh, my goodness. I think they just cut our Blog Talk off. I guess it ended. They usually tell you 90 seconds, 60 seconds.
They do that countdown, and I'm looking at my clock, and my clock isn't watching what their clock is. But anyway, for those, I don't know if we're still recording.
Well,
yeah,
we're still live at least.
Yeah.
We can finish our thought there.
Yeah, they just cut. I don't know. Am I still with you?
Yeah, I can still hear you.
Okay, because something just went off there. Anyway, for those people who listen to this as an afterthought, we need to follow that greatest commandment. We need to have love for each other, and we need to turn around and care for each other, because it's only by following that we are going to survive the dynamic changes which are going to take place on this planet. So, we need to follow that. Yeah. And that's what it all comes down with. Jesus gave his life for us. Are we any greater than the Master?
Oh, no. Nowhere near. Yes, sir, we need to be more loving. You're right, to fellow man. I tell you, it's so easy to get upset, you know, even today on the highway. It's like this guy's right on my bum on the back of my vehicle, and I'm like, you know, I'm slowing down because I got to pay a toll. I mean, why you rushing? You know, they say slow down when you're on these exit ramps and things, but yet the people want to be right on your bumper. It's like, ease up. You know, we'll get there in a minute. And there was a line of cars up there already.
my grandfather used to say, when he was alive, he said, don't worry, when it's your turn to go to hell, you'll slow down.
There you go. That's a good one. But
anyway.
Yeah, we got to love our neighbor. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, so don't be stockpiling bullets and don't worry about weapons. Stockpile food and worry about your state of love, your state of mind. Remember, the scriptures say, all those who call on the name of Yahweh or Jehovah shall be saved. And that's our main concern. We all need to have a positive personal relationship with God, because without that, we are lost, and we'll never be able to reap the benefits that is talked about later on in Revelation after Armageddon. We'll never be able to get to that point where our DNA will be healed, and we'll actually be in a state where we'll be with the tent of God, or it actually says, Revelation 21, 1 through 4, it talks about the tent of God being with mankind, and that neither mourning nor pain nor outcry will be any more, and neither will death be any more. The former things have passed away.
Wow. Amen. And we're gonna get a new body, and it's gonna be all right. They can't hold us down long. Even if they take us and kill us, you know, it's just a matter of time until Jesus is back and we're in the heavenly clouds with him, you know. So,
well, hopefully we'll have heaven here on earth and nobody will have to go anywhere.
Well, you know, we do have that to look forward to, 1,000-year reign at least, you know, and then the New Jerusalem, and then, so maybe it is going to happen right here. I don't know. That's up to God. I just want to be wherever he is. That's the main thing.
Absolutely. Keep that personal relationship going. Look to him for everything that we need. And with that, I'm going to say goodnight and love and blessings to all.
Hey, God bless you, Peter. Thanks for coming on.
My pleasure. And give my best to your lovely wife.
All right. And ladies and gentlemen, you all have a beautiful night. And God bless you.